Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. I've got one hell of a treat for y'all today, because we are talking about the debut solo album from Metallica's longtime lead guitarist, Kirk Hammett. Technically it's an EP, if you want to be super technical about it. But the point is, Kirk Hammett has gone solo. The Grammy Award-winning Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted musician, known for his contributions to thrash metal pioneers Metallica, arguably the definitive metal band, inarguably the genre's most commercially successful and iconic band. It's extremely rare for a member of Metallica to go solo. Back in the day, this is pretty much what led to Jason Newsted leaving Metallica because he wanted to do other projects. He wanted to work on music other than Metallica. But, that was 20 years ago, and Metallica was kind of going through some shit in the early 2000s. They're older now, they're wiser now, they're healthier now for the most part. And, the last couple of years have shown that they're at least open-minded to other side projects. Rob Trujillo, for instance, recorded some stuff with Infectious Grooves last year, which is this funk metal band that kind of formed out of the ashes of suicidal tendencies in the mid to late 90s. Worth noting as well that both Rob and Kirk are also a part of a band called The Wedding Band. From what I understand, they're a pretty standard kind of rock and roll, heavy metal tribute band. They do a lot of covers, a lot of extended jams. Good for them. There's not really much else to talk about there. But even so, this is the first full-blown solo album, EP, that any member of Metallica has ever put out. So, obviously, pretty high expectations right off the goddamn bat. Some of which, depending on what kind of Metallica listener you are, may not be met. Like, if you're a more casual kind of Metallica fan, you listen to like the Black Album and a couple songs off of Load and Reload, you're not going to be interested in this. Straight up, don't bother. But also, if you're a very typical kind of metalhead and you're just looking for a bunch of riffs and guitar solos and like super gnarly breakdowns and pyrotechnics, you're probably not going to like this either, alright? If you're walking into this expecting basically an instrumental version of Master of Puppets, you're going to be real fucking bummed. What we have instead on Portals is, believe it or not, more akin to the S&M records, which Metallica recorded with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra. It's kind of a symphonic rock record with a lot of influences from classical music and progressive rock, string quartets, keyboards, a lot of guitar wankery. In some ways, I am reminded of the neoclassical pyrotechnics of somebody like Yngwie Malmsteen, but obviously with Kirk Hammett's kind of guitar style. Kirk is very obviously the star of the show on Portals. On top of being a performer, a writer, he also produces the record himself, but there are noteworthy contributions from other noteworthy people, such as Greg Feidelman, who plays bass on the record. He has produced some stuff for Metallica in the past, and has also produced records for Slipknot. John Theodore and Abe Labriel Jr. are on drums. John is best known for his work with the Mars Volta and Queens of the Stone Age. Abe best known for his work with Paul McCartney. Primetime Emmy Award-winning composer and conductor Blake Neely, an Emmy Award-winning conductor and composer, also contributes to the record. I assume he's helped with a lot of the classical and orchestral arrangements. And believe it or not, Bob Rock even makes an appearance on this thing. The same guy who helped Metallica deliver records like Load, Reload, Saint Anger, Yeesh, but also the Black Album. So long story short, a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation, a lot of expectations, a lot of killer talent contributing to Portals. Does it make for a killer record? The simple answer is, honestly, yeah. This is the most liberated I think Kirk has sounded on any recording since the Black Album. He sounds so fucking happy, so fucking ecstatic to finally be moving away from Metallica ever so slightly, to be doing, stuff inspired by classic cinema, by classical music, to be just jamming some gnarly fucking licks with some cool fucking people. and it shows consistently through the record. You've got Maiden and the Monster, a 7-minute shapeshifter filled with a lot of atmospheric and tense moments that honestly would not be out of place in a more progressive moment of like a longer, more ambitious kind of Metallica banger. Definitely a lot more progressive thanks to string work and woodwinds and, some weird funky kind of guitar effects and keyboards. But even so, the overall mood and flow and atmosphere of this, it makes for something that at the very least harkens to stuff like Master of Puppets, Fade to Black, Welcome Home Sanitarium, The Thing That Should Not Be One. Metallica's more ambitious, progressive, high-concept numbers. The Gin takes things even further by indulging in pure mid-70s prog rock nostalgia while throwing on some gnarly fucking shred metal on top. At times, I'm reminded of this ungodly fusion of vintage Iron Maiden and maybe a less chaotic King Crimson. The Incantation as well takes a lot of influence from progressive rock. King Crimson once again comes to mind, but so does the Moody Blues with all of these lush walls of orchestration and woodwinds. This is also at the same time probably the most metal thing on the record, as the latter half of this track eventually evolves into basically a full-on Metallica fucking banger, but with symphonic metal undertones and a whole lot of chaotic nonsense. It's basically S&M, but in studio form for about 2 to 3 minutes. But the EP's true standout is without question its lead single, High Plains Drifter, an homage to classical Western cinema that by sheer coincidence bears a striking similarity to the ecstasy of gold from The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It's big and melodramatic in all of the right ways and for all of the right reasons. It almost makes me wonder if Kirk Hammett was at some point commissioned to write something for a gloriously over-the-top Western film, because this would not be out of place in, exactly that. I thoroughly enjoyed this, much more than I thought I would, so I'm going to give this a very enthusiastic 4 to 5. This is the best Kirk has sounded on a record in a very long time. These are some of his best solos, some of his best compositions and arrangements. Everyone does a great job. The record has a nice, crisp, clean sound to it. It's big, it's gigantic. What more could you possibly want from a kind of symphonic rock, progressive rock kind of record? Honestly, this just proves to me that everyone in Metallica needs to start going solo more often, because this is way better than the entirety of Death Magnetic, Saint Anger, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I actually liked Hardwired, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend for a moment that it's better than this, because it just isn't. If by chance you are walking through a record store right now while watching this, keep an eye out for this on vinyl. This was released to coincide with Record Store Day 2022, April 23rd. I think that's what today is. Yeah, so keep an eye out for it. And if you're at home, I don't know, crack open a beer, play some Red Dead, seems fitting, and enjoy this record. Once again, maybe stay away from this if you're expecting this to be Ride the Lightning or Kill 'Em All in instrumental form, if you're just expecting a bunch of old school gnarly thrash goodness. But yeah, if everything I've said is appealing to you, definitely check it out. 4 to 5. I think it's fucking great. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.